Thank you very much. My name is Alice Knapp, and I'm CEO here at the Ferguson Library. And I want to welcome everybody tonight. Bear with us. We're in transition, and we are asking people to keep their mask on for this program. But trust me that you should follow our websites because the rules will probably change over the next couple of weeks. It's my pleasure to talk a little bit about the Friends of the Ferguson Library because this is part of our author series program that the Friends run. If you are interested in the Friends program, I encourage you to join as a member. P.S. It's only $25, but with that, you get advance notice of all of our author talks and you get a discount at our used bookshop. And you're helping a really great group. Some of the things that the Friends do that make them a really great group is our Books for Babies program, which has been ongoing since 1986. And we make sure every baby born in Stamford receives a book for them to take home. The second thing we do, we're right in the middle of judging right now, and that's the literary competition. And that's for grades 3 through 12. A lot of future writers have come out of that program, and we judge them in poetry, fiction, and nonfiction. And it's just something very, very unique to Stanford, and we couldn't do it without all the hard works of the Friends. So with that, I would like to introduce you to Deb Golden, who is the president of the Friends of the Ferguson Library.
Thank you, Alice. This evening marks a very special author event, and we certainly hope you enjoy it. After the talk, Elm Street Books is over on that side, and they are selling the book. There are limited copies of it right now, but they are also have book plates that Bobby will sign, so you can purchase it tonight, and the book will get to you as soon as they come in. But we do have, I think, 25 books. How many now? Fewer than that now. Okay. As many of you know, Bobby is one of Stanford's most storied and accomplished athletes. From his first year in rookie ball, Bobby Valentine was also a lightning rod for mischievous controversy, earning headlines wherever he went. It's certainly headline worthy that Bobby is here with us tonight. And we are delighted to welcome him and Peter Golenbock, the co-authors of Valentine's Way, My Adventurous Life and Times. Though Bobby probably doesn't need an introduction, especially in his own hometown, he's certainly deserving of one. Bobby Valentine was raised here, resides here, and is considered one of Stanford's biggest boosters. In 1980, at a time when no one thought a restaurant would survive at Columbus Park, Bobby opened Bobby Valentine's Sport Gallery Cafe. He remained at that location for 37 years, and then he moved around the corner to a newly constructed Bobby V's Restaurant and Sports Bar. He is also an owner of Makuhari Media, a company that produces sports documentaries, and is the proprietor of the Bobby Valentine Sports Academy. Bobby was named Stanford's Citizen of the Year in 2011, and before taking a leave of absence to run for mayor of Stanford last year, he was the executive director of athletics at Sacred Heart University. Last week, the State Street Debating Society announced that Bobby will be honored by their organization as its Man of the Year at a ceremony later this month. Outside of Stanford, what Bobby Valentine is most known for is his long and storied career in Major League Baseball as a player and a manager. Tonight, in conversation with his co-author, Peter Golenbock, we'll get to hear some of those stories and talk about Valentine's Way. Peter Golenbock, who also grew up in Stanford, is one of the nation's best-known sports authors. He has written 10 New York Times bestsellers, including The Bronx Zoo with Sparky Lyle, Number One with Billy Martin, Balls with Greg Nettles, George, the Poor Little Rich Man Who Built the Yankee Empire, and House of Nails with Lenny Dykstra. Peter lives in St. Petersburg, Florida, and this is his, I believe, first time back to Stanford in 30 years. One more note before turning the evening over to our guests. In the past week, we have all seen the evening news and have read the papers reporting on the tragic and unnecessary events in Ukraine. We read about the ongoing effects of the pandemic and challenges to our economy. But with our guests here this evening, there is another current news story that I would like to mention, and that is the stalled labor negotiations in Major League Baseball. I am an avid baseball fan. I grew up on Long Island and went to countless Yankee and Met games. I have one son-in-law from Massachusetts, so now we even go to Red Sox games. But I'm angry and I'm sad. I'm sad that the baseball season is being shortened. My grandchildren are sad. They're sad that the opening day of America's favorite pastime is uncertain. Fans everywhere are sad. Bobby and Peter, I welcome your thoughts, and I thank you in advance for this and for your entire conversation this evening. And so please join me in welcoming Bobby Valentine and Peter Golenbock.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank the Ferguson Library and for having us here, mainly because this is the first time I've gotten to meet Peter. Isn't it incredible that in today's world, two guys who grew up in the same city, 50 years after a connect that we didn't make, we connected. We connected because we can, because it's 2000, at the time it was 2020, I guess, with the first phone call. And we did this entire book remotely. So I thank Peter for his excellence. And we're going to talk about the book or something like that. What do you think, Peter?
Well, when I was senior, I went to St. Luke's School. I went to see a Ripperwam High School baseball game. Ron Parenti was the coach. He was a friend of mine. And I'm watching this game, and the shortstop was a 9th grader. And I couldn't believe it. And that shortstop was Bobby. And I guess the first question to ask him, how in the world did a 9th grader ever get to be the shortstop for Ripperwam High School?
Well, we could ask Kenny Dolan, who the next year was the catcher on that Ripperwam team. Kenny's sitting in the back of the room here. You know, crazy as it is, and you can read it in the book, but there was a lot of special kind of serendipitous things that happened in my life that I had nothing to do with, but they controlled my life and they made my life the special life that I've been able to write a book about. One of the things was that when I was going to be a 9th grader at Clunin Junior High School, and I was going to be the big fish in that little pond, they closed Clunin Junior High School. And that's the old Clunin Junior High School down on Henry Street, which is now the community center, right? And so when they closed the school, they put the 7th and the 8th graders around in the other middle schools in town, and they had the 9th graders go to high school. And half of them went to Stanford High and half of them went to Ripperwam. So the answer to the question, how the hell was I playing shortstop as a freshman? It was because they closed the junior high school I was supposed to be at. And the coach was open-minded enough and was able to, I guess, see that I had this little special thing as a 14-year-old that allowed me to lead the conference in hitting and be the all-star shortstop, I guess. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And yet your home was not in the district.
Oh yeah, that was another amazing scenario, right? Because the year before, just as before they were ready to close Clunin, they changed the boundary lines in Stamford. Rather than having the south go to Stanford High and the north go to Ripperwam, the new high school, it was only a 3-year-old high school, they divided the town east and west. And I was going to be in the district to go to Stanford High School. Actually, I was going to go to Catholic High School, because they were recruiting me. But on the day the test was held for entrance exam test to go to Catholic high school, I was in Miami, Florida, dancing in an international ballroom dance competition. And Sister Mary Ann or Ann Mary, one of the two at Catholic High, would not allow me to take the test on a different day. So I didn't get to go to Catholic High. And right at the last moment, people were saying I was going to go to Stanford High. And my dad wanted me to play for the Italian coach, not the Polish coach, for whatever it's worth, right? And it wasn't because the coach was Italian. It was because my dad was Italian, right? And so we wound up selling my house on 39 Melrose Place to my cousin Richie, who didn't have enough of cash for the down payment. So we had to wait a whole year for him to get enough of money for the down payment to get the mortgage to give to my dad so he could buy a house on Stillwater Road, which was way out over his skis. He was selling his house for $19,500 and he was buying one for $27,200. And I mean, that was way out over his skis. So in order for me to go to Rippewam, the year of my freshman year, I lived with my grandparents who didn't speak any English on right off of Selleck Street on Irving Avenue over in the village, basically, of Stamford, Connecticut. Yeah.
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 So
That's kind of in the book too, I think. Yeah.
it is in the book. And one of the things that happened to Bobby, there is a league called the Cape Cod League, which is a league for star college players. And as a senior in high school, Bobby Valentine was invited to play in the Cape Cod League. He may be the only high school player, there may be one other, but I do believe he's the only high school player ever to play in the Cape Cod League. How in the world did that happen?
Yeah, I didn't have anything to do with that either. Actually, it was after my junior year, the summer after my junior year. But what happened was I was playing and we were playing against Catholic high school in a game at Belltown Field. And Andy Robustelli's son and a guy who was dating one of his daughters, Bennett Salvatore, were playing for Stanford Catholic. So their uncle Bill O'Connor, who's a member of the Robustelli family, was an assistant coach at Providence College in basketball, great basketball player out of Stanford. He invited the assistant baseball coach and assistant hockey coach down to his home for dinner, and then convinced him to stay over and watch the game the next day to see Andy Robustelli's kids and maybe future son-in-law play baseball. In that game, I had one of those stupid games where I was running around the bases the whole time and hitting the ball over guys' heads and doing everything that I guess sometimes you do when you have a good day. And after the game, the guy comes over to me and says, "Hey, son, is your mom and dad here? Are your mom and dad here?" And I said, "Yeah, they are." He said, "I'd like to talk to them about you playing for my team." I said, "Well, what team is that?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to coach in Cape Cod this summer, and I'd like you to play on my team." And it turned out the guy came over the next Sunday. We had lasagna at the house. Again, my dad didn't like him because he was Italian. He liked him because my dad was Italian. And I was allowed to go to Cape Cod with this guy who was a 24-year-old assistant baseball and hockey coach at Providence College. And he took care of me. And I hit 300 and all the scouts got to see me play, which is part of the story. And that's why I got signed as a top round draft choice, because I played against college kids and scouts got to see me play. But better than that, it started a lifelong friendship with this guy who is now today is a member of the Hockey Hall of Fame, the NHL Hall of Fame, and is the president of the Long Island Islanders. That's right, the New York Islanders. His name is Lou Lamoriello. So how crazy is that? Yeah.
And
Kinda
what,
cool.
while he was playing in the Cape Cod League, it was his first experience meeting a player by the name of Thurman Munson. A fabulous story.
Huh. Wow, all the stories, yeah. So I'm a high school kid from Stanford. I'll be truthful. I'm not sure that my mom knew where Cape Cod was, and I'm pretty sure that my dad didn't know how to spell it. Um, but I'm in Cape Cod, and my legs are shaking, and I'm playing my first game. And as I'm timing the pitch before I got into the box, the catcher's talking to me. And I never had a catcher talk to me in high school and Babe Ruth League and senior Babe Ruth League. He's talking. Hey, that's a pretty good catch you made. Hey, went right up against the fence. Hey, you must be a pretty fast runner. Hey, that's a good job. I like the way you made that catch. And I'm saying, thank you. Thank you. And then I got into the box. And when I got into the box, he said, hey, step out. And I stepped out, and he went out in front of the plate and said, you know, to his guys, whatever, waved them out. He turned around. As he turned around, he said, go stand by the fence where you caught that ball next year. I want to hit one over your head. Well, I wasn't really paying attention because I was going to hit a home run. Instead, I hit a ground ball to shortstop. I made it out, came to the bench and asked the guy from UConn who was on my team who the catcher is that talks so much. And he told me his name. And I said, does he always talk that much? And he said, I guess so. This is the first game we're playing against them. The guy happened to be Thurman Munson. When they mentioned Thurman Munson, you know, who the hell ever heard a name like Thurman Munson? I said, this is too much for me to learn. I couldn't figure that out. And the next inning, I went out to the center field and I stood out there as the pitch came into the first hitter. And, you know, I didn't know who the first hitter was. I'm a high school kid, and the microphones in those, you know, in Cape Cod, now batting number 2, and, you know, the little speaker behind home plate, right? I couldn't hear what it was out in center field. Well, lo and behold, the pitch came in. This guy hit a ball. I'm running over to catch the ball. I get over near the fence where I made the catch the inning before, and I stopped and watched the ball go over my head and over the fence. And as the guy was running around second base, he pointed out to me. And here's the rest of the story, because on Monday, this Monday, coincidentally, I'll be in New York City at Chelsea Piers at a charity dinner for the Thurman Munson Award dinner, a dinner that I have attended for many years, and I received the Thurman Munson Award maybe 15 years ago. Well, when I received the award at the microphone, I told this story. Now, Thurman had been dead for over 10 years. His foundation was going strong. And after I got through talking, his wife came over to me on stage and gave me a big hug, and she was crying. And I said, well, thank you. Thank you. It wasn't that good a speech though. And she says, no, you don't understand. Thurman told that story 100 times. No one ever believed him because we didn't know who the hitter was that he was talking to, which is kind of cool thing, huh? And so, yeah, Peter. So that's Monday night, the Thurman Munson dinner, if you care, yeah.
So when he was in high school, all sorts of colleges wanted him to come and come play football and baseball in college. Several University of Pennsylvania baseball owners. One was Mike Burke. So Mike Burke invited Bobby to come to Yankee Stadium to meet Mickey Mantle. So
as his duty as an alum trying to recruit the kid from Stamford, Connecticut, who he heard from the admissions office was a Yankee fan. Huh? You get all that? Mike Burke didn't know me from Adam, but he sent his car to CBS owned the Yankees at that time. And Michael Burke was that white-haired guy, very flamboyant with the real thick ties that you always see in those old photographs. And he was the president of CBS and president and owner, part owner of the Yankees. Anyway, I went down, and it was, yes, to meet Mickey Mantle. And I got to go on the field. It was the first time I was at, second time I was at Yankee Stadium. One time I saw a doubleheader. I sat behind one of those, what were they called? The obstructed seats. You ever sat behind the ball out right field? And the second time I got to go now was after my junior year in high school during that summer when I got back home from Cape Cod and the world was spinning around. And now I'm going to get to meet Mickey Mantle. Holy cow. He was the guy. He was my idol. It was what it was all about. When I was healthy in high school at times, when I ran off the field, I would run off with a little bit of a limp because when he ran off the field, he had a limp, but he had a limp because he had a big leg, which is all kind of ironic, huh? So anyway, I go down, I'm standing with the owner behind home plate during batting practice. You know, they had that cage, they call it a turtle, and it protects everyone and doesn't allow foul balls to go into the stands. And I'm standing behind there as everyone comes to hit, but Mickey never comes to hit. And he's the only one I want to meet, and I'm meeting other Yankees, but I want to meet Mickey. And finally he comes out, he's the last one to come out, and he takes a few swings, and when he's through taking his swings, he kind of throws his bat up. Batting practice is all over, and he's walking on this day game, 1967, a Sunday afternoon. And if you read any of Mickey's books, you know that he wasn't doing real good in day games because he was usually just coming in when the game was ready to start from the night before. Anyway, he's walking off the field and the owner's trying to get his attention. Mickey, 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 and he keeps walking. And finally, the photographer, who is patiently waiting to take this photograph, runs over, grabs Mickey by the sleeve, and brings him back to take the photograph with the kid. And Michael Burke says, "Come on, Mick, take a picture with the kid." And he says, "Okay." And he puts his arm around me. And as the guy's ready to snap the photo, and I don't know why this isn't in the book.
It is in the book.
The photo isn't.
Oh, no, the photo is.
Huh? I mean, the story's in the book, and it's my favorite photo of ever. And I got him to sign it years later, but he has his arm around me. And as the guy's taking the photo, he leans over and whispers in my ear and says, "I hope you have to go through this shit someday, kid." Kind of interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Peter liked that part of the book.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. Well, one of the colleges he went to see was Notre Dame. Ara Parseghian was the head coach of Notre Dame, the fabulous Ara Parseghian. And when Bobby told me this story, I thought, only Notre Dame. Tell him what happened.
Yeah. Well, as crazy it is, and Kenny again is back here, and he remembers the junior and senior year where these letters were just coming in from colleges, you know, like West Point offered me a basketball scholarship. I stopped playing basketball after my sophomore year because I wasn't very good, mainly. And you know, Nebraska was sending letters, and University of this and University of that, probably a couple hundred different requests that Al Shannon, my football coach, God rest his soul, and Ron Parenti, my baseball coach, again, rest in peace, took it upon themselves to weed out the weak. Figure I can't go to every school, I can't talk to every coach. Let's just figure out which ones there are. And one of them, of course, was going to be Notre Dame, not because I was thinking about going there, but because they were on TV every Saturday. And I thought it was really cool that Notre Dame was on TV, but I didn't think they played baseball. When I got there, I found out they did play baseball, but there weren't any baseball scholarships offered in those days. There were probably 2 or 3 most, and they were divided up. So everywhere I went was to play football and get a football scholarship, and then work the deal with the football coach that he was going to let me play baseball also. It was a tough thing at the time. But anyway, I went to Notre Dame. Ara doesn't see me on Friday night, doesn't see me on Saturday. Sunday morning after church, I'm eating in the mess hall or in the cafeteria there with a couple of the players. One of them might have been Joe Theismann. I'm pretty sure I stayed in his room actually at the time too. That's what he says too. But Ara comes over to the table. Now he's the coach of Notre Dame. He is the man, and he looks good. When he walks across the room, he has a good presence about him. His hair was shiny black, and sits down and says, "Hey son, I welcome you to Notre Dame, and I guess you're probably wondering why I haven't been recruiting you like the other coaches do when you get on campus. And I said, I was thinking a little of that, Coach, but it's really happy to meet you because my Aunt Angie, and I pulled out a little photograph that my Aunt Angie cut out of some magazine of Arab Procedure. And I said, my Aunt Angie would really like an autograph if you wouldn't mind giving her an autograph. And as he was doing it, he says, yeah, I'll do that. But let me tell you, the reason that I haven't been hustling you here on campus is because we believe at Notre Dame that you don't have to sell a Cadillac, and we're the Cadillac, which is a pretty cool little line, huh? And then as we were leaving the mess hall and going down the stairs in this snow-filled quad there on campus, on the bottom of the stairs, there were the two masses of humanity. There were like six guys, and they were all like 9 feet tall and weighed 700 pounds, the biggest people I've ever seen in my life, standing shoulder to shoulder. We walked down the stairs and we stopped right in the middle of this mass of humanity. And Era says, and I told you about us being the Cadillac. And I said, yes, sir. He said, but that's not the only reason you should come to Notre Dame. I said, and whatever I said. And the other reason, yes, sir. I was probably saying yes, sir, all day. He says, well, listen, if you come to Notre Dame and on cue, this group of big guys turned around. He said, you could be looking at the backs of these guys because there are offensive linemen. And I'm looking up at them like this. And he says, and if you don't come to Notre Dame, you could be looking at the front of these guys because they're all our defensive linemen, which is really kind of cool. Now, as things went on, I figured the only reason those guys were scholarship players was to pull that stunt for when running backs came to campus. Yeah, Peter, that's a good story.
It is. Yes, it is.
That stuff actually happened. And it happened when I was like all this stuff in 16, 17, 15, 14. In this community, I was just so lucky that so many people helped me out. So many of the coaches, the teachers, the Mr. Martin, who should have flunked me in Latin and instead gave me a C, and helped me with my board scores, and all the people who were really good to me allowed me to experience things. And that's just up until so far I'm 18 years old, and we only have a half an hour left, Pete. So we might have to go fast forward on this stuff.
Well, you do want to tell them why you got into USC. That's where you got into, but you didn't.
Right. So I accepted a scholarship to go to USC. I was going to play both sports there because the football coach and the baseball coach were good friends, John McKay and Rod Dato. And I wasn't going to have to go to spring football practice. I was going to be able to play baseball in the spring and all that nonsense. At the time, room and board was $1,700 for a year in Southern California. Now tuition's $86,000. And I don't think $1,800, $1,700 buys you your books. So anyway, I signed a letter of intent to go there. I got accepted to go there, which was a big deal also, because a couple of weeks later, I signed this professional contract after I was drafted #1 by the Los Angeles Dodgers in the 1968 draft. And the draft was the day after Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. If we can think back of when that was. So there was no really even a lot of excitement about baseball draft, because the only thing in the news was Bobby. But when I signed the contract, I also had to include the fact that I would be a full-time student. Because if I wasn't a full-time student, as some of the gray hairs remember, or if you weren't married with kids or crippled, you went to Vietnam. And the Dodgers weren't going to give me a signing bonus to play baseball and then have me go off and serve a military duty. So I was a full-time student at USC, which caused situations too. Yeah.
Well,
and that's in the book too.
It is all in the book. The Los Angeles Dodgers, he was 18 years old. They send him to Ogden, Utah. And his manager is a rebellious sort. His name was Tommy Lasorta. Now,
Yeah.
he is Tommy Lasorta, as Bobby is about to tell you, one of the most interesting personalities you will ever run across.
Yeah. Tommy is special. But it wasn't Tommy Lasorta that we know now, the Hall of Fame guy who won the gold medal for the USA and won World Series championships and did commercials on television. He was the rookie league manager trying to prove himself in major league or in professional baseball that he could be a manager. He was a pitcher for 15 years. He never got to the big leagues except for a cup of coffee. He was a scout where he scouted players, and then he got an opportunity to be a manager in the lowest classification of baseball, the rookie league. And so I got the number one draft choice, got on a plane and went to Ogden, Utah, after I borrowed the Encyclopedia Britannica from Aunt Doris to see where Ogden, Utah was. Huh? For whatever it's worth, I don't know how many of you in 1968, if you were around, if you knew where Ogden, Utah was. I knew Salt Lake City because I heard of it. Anyway, this guy Lasorta, when I was being recruited out to USC to play football, I was walking around with football players. They dropped me off at the baseball field to watch the baseball game in the spring because the catcher on the baseball team was Steve Sagi. Steve Sagi was also the quarterback on the football team. He was the guy who handed off to O.J. Simpson all those times to put you in the right era if you can get there, huh? So he was a two-sport guy, a catcher and quarterback, captain of both teams, and I was going to wait to talk to him after the baseball game to see what it was like to play two sports. Well, while I was sitting in the stands, a guy comes down, taps me on the shoulder, and he gives me a transistor radio. And some of us who are gray hairs enough know that they were about that big, and they were rectangles. And this had a nice leather cover, and along the front of it, had a Dodger inscription. He said, "Here, I want you to take this and remember that the Dodgers think you're a good player." Now, I'm just a high school kid being recruited, and the Dodgers have me on their radar, but they don't know that they're going to draft me because you don't know when you get drafted in those things. It turns out he gives me the radio. I fly to Ogden, Utah. I get off the plane. When I get to out the gate, the guy that meets me is the guy that gave me the radio. And he's the same guy that I gave his son's eulogy and I gave his eulogy. And he was a friend of mine, a dear friend, a dear mentor, a coolest guy who ever lived, a guy who could have tobacco in his mouth and argue with the umpire and brush his teeth, and the next day be opening up the presidential press conference at the White House. A guy who could sing with Frank Sinatra in Vegas as he did with a tuxedo on, and then yell at the players in the clubhouse. He changed the whole paradigm of managing, in that until he became a manager, the manager was the general, and he ruled by the rules of the greatest team that was ever assembled, and that was the U.S. military. They had never lost at the time. They were undefeated. And my way, or the highway, one way is the only way, was the way all managers in business and in sports ruled the roost. And Tommy decided to change that paradigm by not only being strong, but also being caring. And he learned the players' high school. He learned the wife's name. He learned the kids' names. He knew, when their birthday was, everyone. And I did that my entire career. I managed 24 years. And every time a guy had a birthday on the day that I managed, regardless of how important the game was or how unimportant he might have been in the 25-man scheme, they always played. And Tommy always played the guy on his birthday because it's a special day and it only happens once, right? So anyway, I was blessed with him being my rookie league manager, played with a bunch of great guys, had a bunch of great stories. And again, a lot of them are in the book.
So one of them, my favorite one, Tommy Lasorta had Bobby and several of the other Ogden players write letters to the players starting on the Los Angeles Dodgers, telling them how they were coming to take their jobs. Bobby?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. He brought in about 6 of us. He said, you're all going to play in the big leagues, and I want you to play there as soon as possible. And I want you to right now, get this. Yeah, write a letter, right? Huh? We remember how write a letter. We weren't texting anyone. There was no email. We were going to handwrite letters and to the guy at our position and tell him we're going to come and take their position. And we were in rookie ball. Now there were 2 A teams above us, a double A team above us, triple A team above us. All these guys are at our positions. He doesn't have us write the letter to the A League guy, the guy ahead of us. He has us write the letter to the big leagues. It was classic. So Billy Buckner, Steve Garvey, Tom Pashort, Sandy Vance, me, maybe one other guy, it's probably in the book, all wrote letters to these guys who all remembered it when we got to spring training our first time. Huh? If you can imagine.
Garvey was the only one who didn't.
I don't think Garvey did. Yeah, he was
Garvey
too
was
polite.
the only one who played 10 years for the Dodgers. Every one of these other players got traded away. Every other one of them.
Yeah,
One
Yeah.
other story.
because we really had an allegiance to Tommy.
Yeah.
And just so you get that one too, for whatever it's worth, because politics are politics. And we know that I know a little about politics, at least 6 months worth. And, but politics and baseball always existed too. And so Tommy was recruiting people to vote for Tommy as to be the guy to lead the Dodgers, not in the minor leagues, but in the major leagues. So he was always trying to recruit guys within the organization, whether you're a player, or you're a scout, or you're a front office person, to, be on Tommy's side. And some of us as players drank the Kool-Aid, and there was nothing other than Tommy. And I still feel today that there should be nothing other than Tommy. He was the best that I ever experienced. And I wanted to experience my big league career with him. And the guy who was the manager at the time was a guy who's in the Hall of Fame, who signed 24 one-year contracts to manage the Dodgers. His name's Walter Alston. And just to tell you how old school, when we're talking about old school, he was for 2 years that I was on his team. I was on his team. I had a number, a walker, the whole 9 yards. He called me Billy for 2 years. And not only called me Billy, he would introduce me like at a banquet or two when he would stand up there smoking a cigarette. And then number 3, we have Willie Davis. He'll be playing center field. And number 2 is Billy Valentine. He'll play the infield. And when he was told by the coach a couple of times, Skip, his name's Bobby, he would say, and I heard him once say it, yeah, but we got a lot of Billies. Let's not confuse things. And we did at the time. We had Billy Gabarkowitz, Billy Russell, we had Billy Sudeikis, we had Billy Buckner, we had Billy Singer. There were a lot of Billies on the team. So what the hell's one more? I was just another Billy. Yeah.
But the great story about Lasorta, the one I love the most, Lasorta was in Spokane and Bobby joined him on the Spokane team, and he was playing shortstop for Spokane. And apparently he was making enough errors that the pitchers on the team decided that they didn't want Bobby playing shortstop anymore. And the pitchers decided they were going to hold a meeting, and they called Lasorta for this meeting. Absolutely one of my favorite stories. Tell them what Lasorta said.
Well, I got to give just a little color because anybody who's from Stanford, Kenny's back there. So I lived this thing. I was either a center fielder or a shortstop. And the town was divided from the time I was probably 13 years old, whether or not I'm going to be a shortstop or I'm going to be a center fielder. Ron Parenti finally put the stick down when I got there as a freshman and said, he's going to be a shortstop. And so I started to be a full-time shortstop, not a center fielder sometimes and a shortstop sometimes, but a full-time shortstop. And I was until my senior year. And Ron Parenti left Rippewam High School my senior year to become the vice president at Dolan. And he handed the reins over to a guy named Mike Setti, who's kind of like related to me somehow. I never quite figured out, but he's a cousin's uncle's cousin or something, in the Italian family. And he decided, because now he's the new coach, that now I was going to play center field and not play shortstop. And we had a pretty good shortstop too, that he was going to have play shortstop, a guy named Kenny Nichol. And so anyway, I get drafted as a center fielder. In Ogden, Utah, I play center field for Tommy. I'm the all-star center fielder and the MVP of the league. The next year, Tommy goes from rookie ball to AAA. Unheard of. No one goes from rookie ball to AAA. Tommy goes as a manager from rookie ball to AAA. And his shortstop gets hurt, and he has to call up someone to play shortstop in AAA. I was going to be converted that year and go to A ball and be a shortstop again. After not playing shortstop since my junior year in high school, I'm now going to second year in pro ball. I'm going to get converted back because the Dodgers had a good center fielder. His name was Willie Davis. He was only 31 years old. And their shortstop was 38 years old, Maury Wills. So Tommy says, you're going to be a shortstop, so you get to the big league sooner. So I said, what a good idea. I'll go to Bakersfield. Well, while I'm waiting to get my finals taken at USC, I go to the Dodger game. My car is packed. I'm going to drive to Bakersfield, which is about halfway up the state of California, where I was going to play A ball. And the phone rang from Tommy saying that he was going to send the shortstop from his team, AAA, to the big leagues. And he wanted to have the AAA shortstop replaced by moi. So I went to AAA with no spring training. I took ground balls a lot with the Trojans at USC, but now I was at AAA. And when you think that I was making a lot of errors, it's not even comprehensible how many errors I was making. I was making a lot of errors. And so the pitchers, who are all these, 33, 34-year-old guys who've been in the big leagues, back down, worked their way up 10 years to the minor leagues and get to AAA. Now they want to get to the big leagues. And when they're pitching, I'm throwing the ball into the stands and they're not getting a win. And they think their chances of getting the big leagues are being limited. So they call the first year manager into a little caucus and they tell the first year manager, Lasorta, they don't want to pitch when I'm playing shortstop. And Tommy went over and called a meeting, took everyone off the field during batting practice, called a meeting, and started walking up and down in between the ranks in the clubhouse. Now, the clubhouse was about the size of this stage, right? With everybody had a little hanger, right? It was a nail that you hung your stuff on, right? And a little place to put your shoes. So it wasn't a very big room, but he was walking back and forth and they were sitting at their lockers and he wasn't saying anything. He was walking and steam was coming out his ears. And I can't say the words that he expressed to his players when he said, you don't want to play when this kid's at shortstop? Well, I'm going to tell you what you're all going to do. You're going to get a pen and paper or a pencil and paper. And I'm going to go into my office. When I come out of my office, I want every one of you to have that kid's autograph. Because when he's playing in the big leagues, you'll all be carrying a lunch bucket in your hometown, telling everyone that you got to play with Bobby Valentine when you were in AAA. So I sat at my locker as he's doing this, looking down at my feet, thinking that this was going to be the thing where he's going to come to his senses and say, well, the kid's going to go back to A-ball. He's going to learn how to play shortstop. He'll be back. Let's go win one for the Gipper. I thought that was going to be the speech. Instead, it was get the kid's autograph. So I was sitting down looking like this, never looked up. And the next thing I saw, there were feet in front of me. And I looked up and the entire team was lined up. They all had pencils and papers and they all got my autograph. And they all were carrying lunch buckets when I was in the big leagues. Not really, but Yeah, it's kind of amazing he did that.
Just amazing.
Oh, and then just for the footnote, I was making a lot of errors and I was hitting about 210. All right, it's striking out a lot. I wasn't, it was AAA. I was 19 years old. The next youngest guy in the league was 25, I think. And after that meeting, I think I made another 10 errors for the next 3 months of the season. And I hit over 300. And the next year I came back and played the same position with the same team as a 20-year-old and won the MVP, led the league in 7 different categories, and was the all-star shortstop. So it might have something to say about when the boss has confidence in the employee, huh? 5 minutes, and then we're going to go to questions. So we're only at 21. So there's a lot of stuff that went on. You know, after I did this thing, I broke my leg. This is the leg that I broke. It's still rather crooked. There's a whole story about that, about the doctor who went on vacation when it was straight and came back and it was crooked. There's a whole story about going to court. And yes.
2 people have asked me to ask you this question.
Okay.
And I'm sure everybody wants to know the answer to this question.
Yes.
There was a game when you were the manager of the Mets,
Yeah.
when you got tossed out for arguing with the umpires, and you came back
Yeah.
looking like one of the 3 Stooges. You had sunglasses, you had blackened eyes,
Mustache. Yeah.
and some of your players were involved in this incident. Tell them what happened.
Well, like everyone said, you know, did you really think you weren't going to be caught? And I'd say, well, I wasn't caught the other 10 times, which isn't true. Yeah, it was just one of those things, you know. Well, we're going to open it up to questions and answers, but here's what happened on this glorious day. 3 days before this night, I had the most traumatic day of my life when 3 of my coaches were fired, unbeknownst to me. You're going to have to read all the details if you want, but it was really an amazing thing. My general manager fired the guys without telling me, and we were on a 6-game losing streak. We were playing the Yankees. You know, it was an interleague Subway Series. We were in first place. All of a sudden, we're not in first place. My neck's out on the line. A lot of people thought I should have quit when they fired my coaches and showed them loyalty. Instead, I said I'd stay on and turn the thing around, you know. And at that press conference 3 days before, I said I'd turn it around. And when a reporter asked me what my record was going to be in the next 55 games in the most pressure-packed press conference I ever did, with all the New York press and me on stage and my general manager on stage and no one else, they said, what would we do in the next 55 games? I said, we'll go 40-15. That means we'd win 40 and we'd lose 15. And the guy said, and what if you don't? I said, I'll quit. Okay. And that's documented. As I say, you can Google it. And you could see that that was true. And 3 days later, we won 2 games, and now we're winning the 3rd game. And then we have a situation at home plate where my catcher got called for catcher's interference and the catcher's balk at the same time. 2 plays that no one knows what they are. And I'm not going to waste your time describing it, but it was a ridiculous situation where he was arguing with the umpire. I came out. I didn't want to argue with the umpire because I didn't want to get thrown on the game, because I had these new coaches on my team and I didn't know if they even knew who my players were. They were just appointed by the front office, you know what I mean? And my neck was on the line to win games. So I'm not getting thrown out. I just said to the umpire, what did you call? And when he told me what he called, I said, that's really ridiculous. He said, well, that's enough, Bobby. You better go to the dugout or I'm going to toss you. And I was going to the dugout, and then I stopped and I turned back to him and I said, yeah, well, can I get thrown out for what I'm thinking? And he said, no. And then I told him what I was thinking. And then he threw me out. And I was thinking that there's nice things about him. So yeah, so I got thrown out. I went up to the dugout clubhouse. The guy said, hey, go back there. They gave me a hat. They gave me a glove, sunglasses. I went in to see what it looked like with the sunglasses on. I took off my uniform, and on the trainer's table were the stickers that you put underneath your eye. You've seen the players do it to keep the glare of the sun. Well, I took one of the stickers and I put it over here. I took another sticker, I put it over here. I looked at my players and they said, they'll never know. Huh? So I went down to try to lead the team. Everyone laughed. The guy got a hit. We won the game. The umpires saw me afterwards. They laughed. The guy that is the bad guy asked me the bad questions at the press conference, writes a really bad article in the New York Times saying that I disrespected the game and that I should be banned from the game for life. And la-di-da-di-da-di-da. And the president of the league called me in, fined me $10,000 and 3-day suspension. And I went down and pleaded with him, with my father-in-law, Ralph Branco, who was a friend of his. The president was Leonard Coleman at the time, who coincidentally, and I didn't know it at the time, was playing golf during the off season in Florida with my best friend, Joey Chapetta. Okay. And when I was leaving, he told me, hey, I pleaded to get the fine reduced to 5,000 and a 2-day suspension instead of 3 days and 10,000. As I was leaving, he said, hey, I'll tell Joey I gave you a break. And I didn't understand the whole thing until I finally was talking to Joey, and Joey told me Leonard Coleman was a buddy. Yeah. So we're going to open it up for questions because we have to stop in 10 minutes. Yes, sir.
Thank you, and thank you to the library for having you. Congratulations on a great book. I've read it. I highly recommend it to everyone. That's coming from a lifelong Yankee fan and a Stanford Catholic graduate who I think had the same nun that kept you out of Catholic Eye.
Here.
We might still have a school open if you had your records there. I also had the pleasure of watching Game 6 in your restaurant. The only people who were not jumping up and down on tables were myself, another Yankee fan, and a guy wearing a Red Sox hat. So
Radical.
Stanford was blessed with many great coaches in the 60s and 70s. And you mentioned some of them tonight. You mentioned some of the books, but the one who I crossed paths with, who you knew very well, was Mickey Leone at Catholic Eye. Say a word about Mickey. I remember reading a Sports Illustrated article once where you left tickets for Mickey, even though he wasn't there to pick them up, and talk about the scholarship too. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks. We'll try to do that quickly, but Mickey was the dude. The thing is, I never got to play for Mickey. Mickey was always at Catholic Eye, and he was the one devising the defenses that tried to break my legs. And, you know, he did the baseball thing. We did a camp together back in the 70s. I got to know him a little. I played in the Little League named for his dad, the Mickey Leone Little League. I used to watch him play baseball when he was at the Twilight Leagues. When I was a kid, I'd sit at the walls of Belltown Field and watch him play and watch this guy, Josh, scream at him in every game that he ever played, who was a fan of the Holy Name AC. Anyway, Mickey played for, I guess, Gervasio, but Mickey was special. After I grew and after I became a manager, he worked with me at my restaurant. He was one of the guys I could actually bounce stuff off of, not about the hit and run or the squeeze, but about people, you know, about how things were happening in my world that I needed a little guidance with. And he was just a spectacularly thought out person. I loved him. Yeah, after he passed, I left tickets for him, and the foundation for whatever, where we put him in the ground, went over, celebrated his death at the gym at Catholic High School, and a few of us were standing around realizing he was the last Leone in his family. And his sister wasn't married, and he wasn't married, and there wasn't anybody coming after him. And we said, holy cow, we have to let this name live on, let this guy's memory and his standards live on. And about 4 of us got together and said, let's do it. We were going to put together $5,000 each. Anyway, since 2003, when we started the foundation, we've given away $1.3 million of scholarships to Stanford boys and girls, yeah, in his name. And it's been a labor of love for everybody who's involved with the Mickey Leone Foundation. Yeah. We have another 6 minutes.
There's a message, a question in the chat here. Who was the toughest pitcher for Bobby to face?
Yeah, I faced all those guys in the 70s that probably they don't know about. But my first game winning hit was against Bob Gibson, and my second game winning hit was against Tom Seaver. And those were two of the greatest pitchers of the 70s and the greatest pitchers I ever saw. But the toughest for me to hit was a guy named Ferguson Jenkins, who, he won 20 games in a row, 5 years in a row, pitching for lousy teams. And I could never figure him out, and hitting's all about recognition and angles. As pitches break, you got to figure out where this ball's going to be and perceptually put your bat where the ball is when it's coming across the plate, and I could never figure him out. I was pretty good at math. Matter of fact, I think I was excellent at math. And I used that idea of math and angles to figure out where I would put the bat. I didn't do the spin. People say recognize spin. I would recognize angles. But Ferguson Jenkins, one of the only ones of his time, threw 5 different pitches, but he threw them from this side of the rubber and also in the same at bat from this side of the rubber. So you would see the same pitch and it would look totally different. And I never could figure him out until I hired him as a coach in Texas. And he was my second pitching coach. And I wanted to know, what is it? What is it? How'd you make the ball break that I couldn't figure it out? And then he showed me, and it was really cool. Now in the 70s, you couldn't see the mound and no one ever cleaned it off for whatever it's worth. It's not the pristine stuff that you see in baseball today. There are big holes out in front of the mound and there was dirt all over and the ground crew never came out on the field during the game. So that he was on one side of the rubber or the other probably would have been easier to see today. Another question. We have 4 more minutes. Yes, go.
Yes. Bobby, you're a fantastic gentleman. Your inspiration to the people, to everyone, and greatly appreciate having you here tonight. Bobby, question. Your manager, my first baseball game I went to was Joe Torre, right? 1977.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember that with Lee Mazzilli and company, John Stearns.
Yeah.
And you're playing the Cincinnati Reds.
Wow.
Imagine that. They were the world champions that year. They come with Johnny Bench and company, Pete Rose. So it was Joe Torre. I was right. All right.
Joe Torre was a player manager
At
in that
time.
77 year. So he played first base a lot of the time. There was no DH, and he also managed the team, which is really kind of unique. And that was the year that Tom Seaver was traded, and there were no fans in the stands. So I don't know how the heck he was in the stands because there were no fans in the stands.
Oh, no, wait,
You were the one.
Johnny Bench almost killed me, and my cousin.
He told me about that just the other night.
Oh, wow. Come on. Johnny
Okay.
Bench was fantastic, Bobby.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you,
Thank you for being here. Thank you.
So
Any other?
one other story I think
Yeah.
people,
Go ahead. Well, Andy McAleer's in the back of the room helped a lot with putting my words and my sentences in with correct diction. A guy named Tommy Chiapetta from Stanford was the first guy who ever showed me what stats were. And that was in 1974. He had every at bat that I had in every city and against left-handers and righters, all that stuff, right? So he helped with recollection. But the way we did it, just so you get the process, or the process, as they say, Peter would call me with 3 questions, sometimes 2. He's in Florida, I'm in Stanford. He'd ask me the questions. Hey, and so what do you remember about Nolan Ryan in 1973 when he threw his first no-hitter? He would record it. He would transcribe it. He'd send it back to me. I'd read it to see if that's what I remembered.
and he did.
And we put it into a book. Yeah. Yeah. And it was a labor of love because I really busted his, I'm not ready. No, not now. Call back in an hour. Okay, I'll call back in an hour. I'll see you then.
We talked for 40 hours. Most books I did 20 hours, 25 hours. Bobby Valentine was truly the most interesting subject that I have ever worked with. He was spectacular. Trust me on this.
Thank you, Peter. And he was, like I say, to do what he did with my ramble, and people who have read the book, that I don't know. And they say, hey, I really like to read. It read really well. It sounded like you. And guys and gals that I know read the book and they say, I read the book and I really liked it. And it sounded like you. So he did a pretty good job of making it actually sound. The only thing about sound is, and it's not in the book, and we have another minute. The first game that I did on NBC went internationally. That was back in 1980. I was doing some work with Tony Kubek and Joe Gragiola. Anyway, the newspaper in Toronto wrote a critique of my national broadcast, my first game telecast. And they said, we really like the insight. We really like his energy. We just can't figure out which Sesame Street character he sounds the most like. So we're ready, right at 7:30.
One last
question. Yes.
One last one, Bobby. As Bobby and Peter, as observers and participants in the great game, if you had 30 seconds to talk to the players and 30 seconds to talk to the owners tomorrow morning to get them back on the field, what would you tell them, Peter?
I would tell them the fans are really pissed that we understand that the owners have been screwing you for 200 years. We get that. But we as fans need the game. We need you to give a little. We hope they'll give a little. And we need to get back, play ball again.
Again, I did the 72, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I was a player rep. Those are the first years ever, the first collective bargaining agreement, the first one. That's when Kurt Flood got the ruling from the court and Andy Messersmith actually went out on the free agent market during those times. It wasn't coincidental that I was with 3 different teams during that time because player reps were looked at as the worst people in the world. We were part of a union. And not an owner dealt with a union in any of their private life, I'll bet. So it was a whole new world. The amazing thing is, it was nothing different then than it is now, other than the numbers. Right. The whole process was exactly the same, where you don't talk for 2 months when you should be talking. And then when you do talk, you don't settle on anything. And then when you settle on something, you make it seem like it's the biggest thing in the world. It has nothing to do with the biggest thing in the world because that's the last thing you're going to settle at. And it's not owners and players who are really doing this right now. Believe me, for whatever it's worth, for the last 3 decades, it's just the lawyers that get hired by the players and by the owners, but they have to come out with a win. And if we do that lawyer stuff in our life, and there's probably a couple here in the audience, and forgive me for saying, but why would a lawyer want to end it sooner? He doesn't get paid once it's over. So they're going to stretch it out as long as they can. And it's all that. April doesn't mean anything. They don't make any money in April. They need 144 games for the TV contracts to kick in. The players get bitter. At the end of the day, this could have been settled 3 months ago if they wanted to. It's just about ego, just about who's going to win. And like Peter says, I guess the fans are losing. I don't like it. I'm supposed to take a job and be an advisor and go to spring training and learn a new organization, and nothing's happening. So I don't like it at all, but it is the way of the land. Yeah. Thank you all for being here. God bless you. Stay healthy. We'll be through with the mask soon, but keep dodging the corona. Peter, thanks for coming all the way up here. Great to finally be in person with you, man. Thank you all. Enjoy. And if anybody wants an autograph, that's easy.
Elm Street books
That's
right
easy.
over here.
And we'll be signing over here at this table.